Hi, my name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help people to build an intentional and significant legacy for themselves and their families by coaching them in real estate. And today what we're going to be doing is giving you the big 30,000 foot view for what is going on in Alaska as far as real estate goes, just to see how we're doing. We'll be taking that big aerial view of Anchorage, the MatSu Valley, the Kenai Peninsula, and Fairbanks, just to give you a big overall idea for how the real estate market is doing in Alaska. There's some really interesting things here, some really interesting trends. Not all markets are the same, so we'll be taking the temperature there. Before we get started, do make sure you give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already to receive more information like this. And without further ado, let's go and jump into today's update. Now, the first thing that we're going to be checking out is just what is going on just across the board for all of Alaska, just as a big aggregate number. So what we're seeing over here for the number of total active properties that are on the market, we're seeing there is obviously a pretty significant decrease from this year versus last year, looking at the first, about the first month back up to the current time, first month of January for the year. So obviously, we've got way less inventory across the board than we did a year ago. This is roughly about 34% decrease in inventory across the board. So that's number one. Across the board, inventory is low. The next thing that I would point out is the average sold price across the board, because we see over here, average sold price is about $316,000, whereas this year, average sold price is actually right about $330,000. So we'll talk about more of that in the summary, but that's really a trend we're seeing in most markets moving forward. Now, the first market we're going to check out is going to be in Anchorage. So this market's a little bit different. It's the largest one we have in South Central Alaska and Alaska in general. In this market, last year we had about 577 homes that were on the market. This year it's 297. So you see the inventory is really getting compressed down in this market. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what the average sold price is doing in Anchorage. So the average sold price we're seeing in Anchorage is actually about as dramatic on a shift as the inventory was, because this over here shows us average sold price this time last year in January was actually right around about $350,000. This year, average sold price obviously went way up here to roughly about $394, somewhere right in there. So inventory's down, prices way up in the municipality of Anchorage. Let's take a look at the MatSu Valley. Now, first off, on the inventory, we're seeing that the inventory in the MatSu Valley has gone down significantly. As a matter of fact, we're seeing it went from about a little over 500 to about 262 homes. So about cut in half is what we're looking at for the inventory in the MatSu Valley. And that's kind of indicative of a lot of demand. We'll get into that in the summary. Now, looking at the average sold price for the MatSu Valley, it's a little different than what we saw in Anchorage. This is actually the first month where the previous year's average sold price is not higher than what we've seen. Because we're seeing here, average sold price did go down slightly, not very much, but did go down a little bit. But you see kind of from the previous year, though, in 2020, year over year, it was definitely higher than it was the year before. So this is the first time in a long time, really in the past year, where we're down just a little bit from where we were the year before. Not sure if this is going to become a big trend or not, but that's what we're seeing. Now let's take a look at the inventory for what's going on in Fairbanks. This market is significantly smaller than the MatSu Valley and Anchorage, evidenced by the fact that 79 homes active on the market last January was kind of the baseline for where we're starting. And this year, it's actually right around 47. So it's significantly lower than what it's been in past years. So that's something we definitely got to keep an eye on. Now, as we would expect here, the average sold price in Fairbanks has gone up, because we're seeing over here, average sold price was about $264,000. It did go up to about $285,000, $286,000. So we did see a bit of an increase there. If if you'll look back here, it hasn't really been a consistent increase over the previous years like what we've seen in the other markets like the MatSu Valley and Anchorage. But for the past month, we are certainly seeing an increase year over year. The next market we need to check out is the Kenai Peninsula. Now, the Kenai Peninsula, it's going to be larger than Fairbanks, but it's usually going to be smaller than the MatSu Valley or Anchorage. So over here, we're seeing that last year, the number of active properties that were on the Kenai Peninsula available on the market was about 390. This year in January, 218. So pretty consistent trend, just really big slashing of the inventory that's available. We're also seeing that that's kind of dramatic, just looking at the past years here. So that's just kind of what we're seeing for the inventory in the Kenai Peninsula. Now lastly, let's take a look at the average sold price for the Kenai Peninsula. We're seeing that it was about $277 last year. This year, it's about $258. So this is going to be a very similar trend to what we saw in a couple other markets where the inventory is low, but the sales price still is going down as well. So that's a little unique. So let's talk about that in the summary though. So for the municipality of Anchorage, we are seeing that it's really a hot seller's market. That's really what we're seeing. Okay, the inventory is low and the average sold price is pretty high. We're also seeing that for the most part for the MatSu Valley. For this past month, inventory is low. For the first time, we're seeing a little bit of a dip in the price that is actually sold for. So that's a little unique, and we don't know if that's going to be a trend going forward. I kind of suspect it's just a fluke for this past month, but by and large, that's kind of what we're seeing, at least for the past month. So for the municipality of Anchorage, we are seeing that it's really a hot seller's market. That's really what we're seeing. Okay, the inventory is low and the average sold price is pretty high. We're also seeing that for the most part for the MatSu Valley. For this past month, inventory is low. For the first time, we're seeing a little bit of a dip in the price that is actually sold for. So that's a little unique, and we don't know if that's going to be a trend going forward. I kind of suspect it's just a fluke for this past month, but by and large, that's kind of what we're seeing, at least for the past month. For the Fairbanks market, what we're seeing is the inventory is really low, okay? This is usually kind of a smaller market anyway, but we're seeing the market is going to be pretty low, and also we're going to see that the average sold price is going up as a result. It hasn't always been that way in the past year necessarily, but we are seeing the average sold price is going up for the month of January. And finally, for the Kenai Peninsula, what we're seeing here is it's going to be kind of a similar story to the MatSu Valley. We're seeing that the inventory is really low, and we're seeing the average sold price is not dropping off the face of the earth, but it's a little bit under what it was for the previous January. And that's not really what I would expect necessarily, but that is what we're seeing. So that's been your update for what is going on in really just Alaska as a whole as far as the residential market goes for real estate. There are definitely some interesting nuggets in here. So if you have questions, do make sure you reach out to me through my Facebook page. Link for that's going to be down below. If you're wanting to check out the latest episode on Alaskan Journey, the podcast in which I interview Alaskans about their authentic experiences up here, we have a new episode that just came up interviewing a captain on a commercial fishing vessel and just talking about his experiences of fishing out there. Is it really like the deadliest catch? Answering those questions. Feel free to check that out in the link below, and I do appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.